Hi, welcome to Launch Tabletop. This is Eris. Today we're going to be looking at downloading templates and opening up the template files in their supported applications. Once you've logged into your Launch Tabletop account and you're at the Launch Lab settings area, if you go to My Projects and then go to one of the projects you've already begun, you'll see some download template files. Now, if you haven't created an account and logged in, if you haven't made a project, if you haven't added components, then I highly recommend you go and look at our other videos on the topic. Alright, so now I click on download template. No, actually let me find the file I want to download. I want to download the game box. So let's go download template. And this will just download it to wherever your browser is set to download things. In my case, it's to a downloads folder, which happens to be off the screen, sorry, so I'm just going to drag that across to this folder. Alright, so we get a zip file when we download the template. So if I clicked on the download template button and it gave me its zip file. If I, on a Mac, double click to open up the zip file. On a PC, I think you just right click and then there's an unzip option, but whatever works on your computer, then unzip the file and you'll get this folder. Inside the folder you will find an instructions PDF, a .ai, a .idml, and a .pdf. If we open up the instructions PDF, we can see here that this has some instructions, surprisingly, or not, and it will also give us some information about the template files. So, one of the pieces of information is telling us what applications the files that are included in the zip file will are supported or will work with, and we're compatible. That's the word, compatible. So the .ai file, it can be opened by Adobe Illustrator and by Affinity Designer. The .idml file can be opened by older versions of Adobe InDesign as well as the current version and Affinity Publisher. The .pdf is just the straight dial lines, no extra features. That is for you to be able to drop into whatever your page layout software of choice is. Alright. And so I was just checking if there's anything else I needed to mention about this. I will just mention one thing if I just zoom out a little bit. With this instruction PDF, it really does have a lot of good information, so I highly recommend that you read over it, and it will help you get a better result from the printing when you come to send your files to Launch Tabletop and to Launch Lab. So on the second page, there's this checklist, which is really handy. And again, it also has more information about some of the things to look out for in your files. For instance, the thickness of lines and how many pages that you need and all that kind of stuff. Every template will have a number of pages that you will need to submit to the system, and it will tell you at the top of the templates. This one says number of pages to be submitted, and it says 2. So I know that for this box artwork, I will need to submit to Launch Lab 2 pages, which will be the top and the bottom, like the lid and the base. Alright, but obviously different components have different requirements. Like you might have a deck of cards and it would require however many cards you've put into that deck, so it might be 36 or 54 or whatever it is, whatever the number is, and you'll need that many pages. Okay, so I'll go back to my folder. So first of all, I'm going to open up the IDML file. So I'm just going to open it this way. You just open however makes you happy, whether you double click on it or go to the application and go file open, whatever works. So this is Adobe InDesign. And we can see that the template has opened up and we've got some die lines present. In the layers palette, there is a die lines layer, as well as a text layer and an art layer. The die lines layer is locked, and I recommend that you keep it locked because you don't really want to touch it. And if you do need to customize the die lines in some way, then I would actually recommend talk to one of our support people first, because it may be that this isn't the right solution for what you're trying to do, and there's another component that does what you want better. And so yeah, it's not advisable to mess with the die lines. And in fact, if you do change them, then it will make it a lot more unreliable for the printing later on, and it may not even work because it may get rejected by the validation system. All right, so that's the dialine layer. The other two layers, the art and the text ones, they are just suggestions. So you might find it's helpful to have your art pieces on the bottom layer, and then the middle layer has the text, so you know it's readable and it's there. But you might have a different system. That's fine. As long as the dialine layer is at the top, that's all that matters from the Launch Lab systems requirements. The other thing to be aware of is that there are 3 or 4 spot colors depending on the file that you are having templates for. There'll be a bleed line, a die line, a fold line, and a margin line. The fold line, though, is only for components like boxes and things where elements are folded. If it's something like cards, which there's no folding and they're just cut, then there won't be a fold line included in those templates. So that's those things. One thing for InDesign users that I will mention is when you go to export your file, your PDF, your print PDF, we'll just say yes for now, and we know I'm going to cancel it, so it'll be fine. Okay, so when you go to export and you go to output, you will see an ink manager option. This just confirms that those 4 those 4 spot colors are there. The spot colors is how the system will analyze and know that the relevant lines are present, and they'll be able to use for all the alignment and everything like that. So just make sure they are there. Make sure that this checkbox that says all spots to process is not ticked. If it's ticked, then you won't have actual spot colors. It's going to convert all of them into whatever mix of cyan, magenta, yellow, black that they would be, and we don't want that for the process because it won't work for the system. So we will untick that and make sure they are spot colors. All right, let's cancel that. So that's InDesign. I'm going to move over to Affinity Publisher. So I'm just opening the template in Publisher. Now it will work basically the same as in InDesign, but obviously Publisher does things slightly differently. But the layers are the same, so we can see that there is a die-line layer here, and then the text and art layers, and the die-line layer is locked, so that's good. Same as before, the art and the text layers are just suggestions. Feel free to change them as you need and have your artwork laid out as you want. Just make sure the die-line layer is at the top and it's checked. And we can confirm in here, if I go to document colors in my swatches panel, now these icons are tiny, but I can see that these are the spot colors. Like if I put my mouse over it, says margin line, fold line, die line, and then the other one should be the front there, bleed line. So they're all there, so that's wonderful. So that is Affinity Publisher. So again, with both cases, you just open them up and they will be there and working. So now the .ai file, if I open this in Adobe Illustrator, you may get this warning just saying that it's using CMYK. That's fine, just click continue. If you have any questions about that specifically, then I would suggest you look up your settings and look up, maybe just do a Google and find out what your settings are set to, and if you want to keep them that way. I was okay with clicking continue. All right, so we can see in Illustrator that we have the 2 pages, which is the top and the bottom, and I should have mentioned in InDesign and in Affinity, those 2 pages are there as well. So that's InDesign, and here's Affinity. So again, we've got the top and the bottom, the base and the lid. Whoops, it has illustrated there. So I'll go back to Illustrator, and we can see in Illustrator the layers are here. We have the die lines layer and it's locked. We have a text layer and an art layer. This is all the same as in the other documents, so the same applies in terms of customizing the text and the art layers. That's fine, but keep the die lines layer on top. So now if we open the AI file in Affinity Designer, it will import it as a PDF option. It brings up the PDF import options. That's fine. That's the expected behavior. It's also bringing up and telling us that it's using that CMYK mode. That's fine as well. So here we can see that it's got the 2 pages with their layers, but it's only brought in the die lines layer. It doesn't have the other 2 layers. that's okay. So all you need to do is lock that layer in InDesign and then add your own layer and drag it underneath the die lines for your art, or as many layers as you want for your art. So just make sure that the die lines layer is locked, and this is for each page separately. So like you'll need to, if I go to the second page and lock it, and then I can add in another layer for my artwork. So now I know for both pages, I've got my die lines there, they're locked, so I can't actually like edit them. Like I can't click on the thing and move it. It's locked, but it means that I can put in my artwork and it'll all be fine. So that's the only thing you need to do that's a little bit different in regards to Affinity Designer. Sorry about that. Affinity Designer. Whereas the other applications, it all brings in those layers in the same way. This one's slightly different. Okay, so the final file is this .pdf. Now, what that is used for, because if I open this up in Acrobat, you'll see that it is just the die lines by themselves with nothing else. So what this is used for is if you've already got some artwork that you've made and you don't want to, you're not starting from scratch, so you may not want to use the template file, like one of the blank template files, then this can be useful. Or if you are using some different software, so something that's not one of the Adobe or Affinity applications, then this PDF is good for that. So I've got, if I go to InDesign, I've got a blank A3 sheet that I've made, so we can pretend that this is an existing document that I may have had some artwork for a game already in. And so all I need to do is place the PDF, and let me just go to my desktop, which is over here, and grab it. So I go to the PDF. Now I'm going to, in InDesign, I'm going to click Show Import Options here, and then that will let me pick the page that I want to import. So in this case, I'm going to pick the first one, and we might just change this to crop and transparent background, and then I go OK. I place it. I'm just going to center that on the page so that I know it's all it's all going to work for measurements and everything. And then I can just lock this layer, make a new layer like we did in Affinity Designer. And so I could also rename this layer. Let me click on it to rename it. So I'm just renaming it die line. And go OK. So now I've got my die line layer. It's locked. I can't edit it, so you can see it won't let me edit anything because it's warning. I'll just change that back to the pointer, and then I go to my artwork layer and I can't move or adjust the die lines, which is perfect. And again, it's brought in the spot colors, so that's all working fine. So that's what the PDF version is for. It's for placing into an existing document that you've already got some artwork in, or into a non-Affinity and non-Adobe application. Okay, well, that's everything. I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions, or if you'd like us to expand on any part of the process, then please leave a comment or get in touch with our team, and we will do our best to help you and make more content that answers the questions. All right, thanks very much. Bye.